Hi, friend. I've been saving you a seat. I'm Melissa, and welcome to Midlife with Melissa. If you've ever wondered where the woman you used to be went, well, you are in the right place because I went looking for her too. Wherever you're listening today, whether you're driving to work, folding laundry, sitting on your porch with your morning coffee, or maybe you're just trying to make sense of another ordinary day, I'm really glad you're here. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's spend a little time together. I have imagined recording this first episode more times than I can count. I have started it in my head while washing dishes, while mowing my yard, while lying awake at night, while sitting outside watching the moon come up, wondering what I could possibly say that would make another woman feel a little less alone. And every time I kept coming back to the same question: where did the woman I used to be go? Maybe you've asked yourself that too. Maybe you've stood in front of the mirror and recognized your face, but somehow you didn't recognize yourself anymore. Maybe you've smiled on the outside while quietly wondering on the inside, what happened to me? If that's why you pressed play today, I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not alone. I didn't create this podcast because I have life all figured out. I created it because I needed a place where the quiet parts could finally be spoken out loud. A place where we don't have to pretend we're okay all the time. A place where we can talk honestly about the things so many women experience, but so few women feel comfortable talking about. Because somewhere between raising families, building careers, taking care of everyone else, walking through grief, navigating relationships, and learning how to live in changing bodies, many of us wake up one morning and realize we've somehow lost sight of ourselves. And not because we failed, not because we're weak, but because we've been carrying so much for so long. And that's where my story begins. For years, I wished there were more hours in the day. I remember thinking, if I could only have one more hour to finish the laundry, one more hour to return a text or a phone call, one more hour to clean the house, one more hour to catch my breath. Life was busy, and honestly, I thought it would always be that way. Then one day, almost without realizing it, everything became quiet. The lunches didn't need to be packed anymore. The car lines were gone. The constant feeling of being needed every minute of every day slowly gave way to silence. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't prepared for that silence. No one ever tells you that one of the biggest changes in midlife isn't just what happens around you, it's what happens inside you. At first, I thought I was simply adjusting to a different season of life. But little by little, I realized something much harder to explain was happening. It wasn't something anyone could see. It wasn't written across my face. There wasn't a cast on my arm or a diagnosis that explained everything I was feeling. It was an invisible shift, a shift that quietly changed the way I thought, the way I remembered things, the way I reacted, the way I saw myself. I couldn't point to one single day and say, that's when it happened. It was more like waking up one morning and realizing I don't quite feel like myself anymore. Around the age of 45, I started noticing changes I couldn't explain. At first, they seemed small and easy to dismiss. I'd walk into a room and completely forget why I was there. I'd stop in the middle of a sentence, waiting for a word that had been part of my vocabulary my entire life. Sometimes I would lose my train of thought so quickly that I couldn't remember what I had been talking about just seconds before. And I remember thinking, Melissa, what is happening to you? I wasn't afraid of getting older. I've always believed that growing older is a privilege. With age comes wisdom, perspective, a deeper appreciation for the little things. No, what frightened me wasn't my age. It was looking in the mirror, recognizing my own face, but feeling like I no longer recognized the woman looking back at me. That feeling is incredibly difficult to explain. But if you've experienced it, I have a feeling you know exactly what I mean. Because maybe, just maybe, you're feeling that same invisible shift too. As that invisible shift quietly became part of my everyday life, I started asking myself these questions I had never asked before. Questions that, honestly, I didn't know how to answer. Who am I when I no longer am taking care of everyone the way I used to? Who am I when life finally slows down enough for me to hear my own thoughts? Who am I when the roles that defined me for so many years begin to change? Those questions didn't arrive all at once. They showed up little by little, almost like whispers. At first, I ignored them. I told myself, you're just tired. You've been through a lot. You'll feel better tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and those feelings were still there. And then another tomorrow, and another, until one day I realized I wasn't just having a difficult week. I was living through a season I didn't understand. I think one of the hardest parts of midlife is that so much of what we're experiencing is invisible. People still see us smiling. They still see us going to work, taking care of our homes, showing up for the people we love. From the outside, everything can look perfectly normal, but inside, everything feels different. Inside, you're wondering why simple things suddenly feel so overwhelming. You're wondering why your emotions seem so much closer to the surface. You're wondering why your confidence quietly slipped away without you even noticing. And perhaps the hardest question of all, is it just me? For the longest time, I honestly believed it was. I thought somehow I had changed into someone weaker, someone who couldn't handle life the way she used to, someone who was losing pieces of herself one day at a time. Looking back now, I realize how unfair I was to myself because I wasn't weak. I wasn't failing. And I certainly was alone. I was certainly not alone. I just didn't know it yet. If I could sit across from the version of myself who was living through those days, I don't think I would try to fix her. I wouldn't tell her to snap out of it. I wouldn't tell her to be stronger. I think I'd simply reach across the table, take her hand, and say, Melissa, nothing is wrong with you. You're walking through something you don't understand yet. And one day, you're going to understand it well enough to help someone else through it. I didn't believe those words then, but I believe them now. As those changes continued, I found myself doing something I had never really done before. I started questioning myself. Not every once in a while, almost every day, I would catch myself thinking, why am I reacting this way? Why does everything suddenly feel so overwhelming? Why can't I remember simple things? Why don't I feel excited about things that used to bring me joy? And then the question that hurt the most, am I losing myself? For a long time, I thought the answer was yes. I thought somehow the woman I had been for so many years had simply disappeared. I couldn't understand why someone who had always loved people, who loved being busy, who loved taking care of everyone, suddenly felt that the safest place in the world was inside her home. That didn't feel like me, or at least it didn't feel like the Melissa I had always known. And because I couldn't explain it, I started believing something was wrong with me. And not because anyone told me there was, because I couldn't make sense of what I was feeling. And when we don't understand something, our minds have a way of filling in the blanks. Mine filled those blanks with fear. Fear that I wasn't the same person anymore. Fear that I would never feel like myself again. Fear that maybe this was simply who I was going to be now. Looking back, I wish someone had gently taken me by the shoulders and said, Melissa, nothing about what you're feeling makes you weak. Nothing about this season makes you less capable. And nothing about this invisible shift changes your worth. You're still you. You're just walking through something you've never experienced. I didn't hear those words then. So today, I'm saying them to you. If you've been questioning yourself, if you've been wondering where your confidence went, if you've been wondering why your emotions feel different, if you've quietly asked yourself, what is happening to me? Please hear me when I say this. You are not strange. You're not failing. And you are certainly not walking this road by yourself. It would be easy to tell you that one morning I woke up and everything was different. that suddenly I felt like myself again, that the fear disappeared, and that my confidence came rushing back. But that wouldn't be my story. Healing has been much quieter than that. It didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived in whispers. Little by little, I began noticing small moments that happened that were not happening before. Like a genuine smile that caught me by surprise. A morning that didn't feel quite as heavy. A conversation that gave me hope. The courage to imagine a future again instead of only trying to survive the present. Looking back now, I don't think I was finding a brand new version of myself. I think I was finding my way back to the woman who had been there all along. She wasn't gone. She wasn't lost forever. She had simply been buried beneath grief, fear, hormonal changes that I didn't understand, and the weight of carrying so much for so long. And as I began giving myself permission to breathe, to learn, to ask questions, I stopped expecting myself to have all the answers. I started recognizing little pieces of her again. That's one of the reasons this podcast means so much to me. Because maybe you're listening today and you're still in the part of the story where everything feels confusing. Maybe you haven't seen your sunrise yet. And if that's where you are, please don't lose hope. Because I want you to know something that I wish someone had told me. Just because you can't see the light yet doesn't mean the sun isn't rising. Sometimes it's just below the horizon. I don't have every answer. And there are still days when I struggle. There are still moments when I have to remind myself to be patient. I'm still learning. I'm still healing. I'm still growing. But today I have hope. And for a while, I wasn't sure I would ever be able to say those words again. If all this podcast ever does is help one woman believe that tomorrow might feel a little lighter than today, then every conversation, every manuscript, every recording, and every vulnerable moment will have been worth it. If you've listened this far, I want to thank you, not just for listening, but for trusting me with your time. I know what it's like to be searching for answers. I know what it's like to type questions into a search bar late at night, hoping someone somewhere understands what you're feeling. I know what it feels like to wonder, is it normal? Am I ever going to feel like myself again? And maybe that's exactly where you are today. If it is, I hope you've heard one thing above everything else. You're not alone. When I first imagined creating this podcast, I thought it would be about midlife. But somewhere along the way, I realized it's really about something much bigger. It's about giving ourselves permission to begin again, to stop measuring ourselves by who we used to be, and start embracing the woman we're becoming. Because here's what I've learned: midlife isn't the end of our story. It isn't the chapter where life gets smaller. It can become the chapter where we finally begin living with a deeper understanding of ourselves. When we stop apologizing for needing rest, when we stop believing we have to carry everything by ourselves, where we learn that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I don't know what brought you to this podcast. Maybe it was perimenopause. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was anxiety. Maybe it was a season of change that left you wondering where your confidence went. Whatever brought you here, I am grateful it did, because I truly believe none of us were meant to walk through these seasons alone. From this point forward, every Monday, we are going to have honest conversations. Some will make us laugh. Some may bring tears. Some might challenge us. Others might simply remind us to be a little kinder to ourselves. But every single conversation will have the same purpose: to remind you that there is hope, that healing is possible, and that you're never walking this road by yourself. I don't know exactly where this podcast will take us, but I know this: I am grateful you're here at the very beginning, and I have a feeling we are going to grow together. Before we say goodbye today, there's one more thing I'd like to leave you with. If no one has told you lately, let me be the first. You're doing better than you think you are. Even on the days when it doesn't feel like it, even on the days when you question yourself, even on the days when you're tired or emotional or wondering if you'll ever feel like yourself again. Please don't measure your progress by perfection. Measure it by courage. Because maybe today, getting out of bed took courage. Maybe making that doctor's appointment took courage. Maybe asking for help took courage. Maybe listening to this podcast because you're searching for hope took courage. Those things matter more than you know. And I don't believe we're meant to have every answer before we take the next step. Sometimes the next step is all we're meant to see, and that's okay. Because every small step forward is still forward. As we spend Monday mornings together, I hope this becomes a place where you can simply be yourself. A place where you don't have to pretend you've got everything figured out. A place where it's okay to laugh, to cry, to ask questions, and to grow. Because that's exactly what I'll be doing too. I'm not walking in front of you. I'm walking beside you. And together, we're going to keep finding our way home. Next Monday, we're going to have a conversation that I wish somebody had with me years ago. We're going to talk about perimenopause. Not just the hot flashes, not just the physical changes, but the emotional and mental and invisible changes that can make us question everything we thought we knew about ourselves. If you've ever wondered, why didn't anyone tell me this? I hope you'll meet me right back here because I've been saving you a seat. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Celebrate the small victories. Don't give up on the woman you're becoming. And whenever life feels overwhelming, remember this. The woman you've been searching for has been there all along. She's still beautifully, wonderfully you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this conversation encouraged you, I hope you'll join me again next Monday. Before we wrap up today, I just want to mention that I am sharing my own experiences and what I've learned along the way. I'm not a doctor or licensed therapist, and this podcast isn't meant to replace professional medical or mental health advice. My hope is simply to encourage you, help you feel less alone, and remind you that there is hope. Everything I share on this podcast comes from my own personal experiences, research, and what I'm learning along the way. I'm Melissa. Thank you for coming by today. Take good care of yourself this week, and remember, I'll be right here, saving you a seat.